Hi there and welcome to my channel. Today's project is for the Vicki Boutin design team, and today I'm creating a new layout using Storyteller and a little bit of mixed media. And the idea for this layout is I create lots of girls layouts and I wanted to use a grid and a boy's picture, and these are my two boys, my baby and my son. So I'm gonna start with the foundation paper, and I want the whiteness of it because I'm gonna add color. I had a comment this week saying that how come I add mixed media and then cover it with my pictures. I love adding color to the background, but in this case I'm actually gonna use the mixed media, or in this case the art crayon, to create the color and help me with the grid. So the first thing I'm gonna do is pull out my foundation paper. I'm using a T ruler and I'm gonna create my grid. The picture that I'm using is a 3.5 by a 4.5 inch picture. So that means that I want to create 4 rectangles on my page, 2 inches from the left and the right and 1 inch from the top and the bottom. So I'm gonna make sure that I create the division. I want to try to keep the rectangles, I'm gonna say, as straight as I can, because I am gonna define each one of the rectangles adding color. So you're gonna see that I'm just taking my time, making sure my lines are straight. I use a 2H pencil, which means the lead is a little bit stronger, harder, so it leaves a really faint line, which I'm not gonna erase because it's barely noticeable. So all I'm doing is making sure all my lines are straight, and then I'm gonna come in with art crayons and start detailing each one of the little squares. In this case are rectangles, but I'm creating a grid. So you're gonna see that once I'm happy with my grid, I am actually gonna start playing with the art crayon. And my idea is I want to keep with a very masculine palette. So I'm gonna go with like a gold tone, greens, teals, and blues. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull this ochre tone, and most of these are in the cool and the neutral set. This one is from the, if I'm not mistaken, the neutral set is that kind of golden, kind of ochreish tone that comes in that set. I'm gonna scribble it on a piece of acetate. I'm just gonna add some water and I'm gonna use a flat brush. The flat brush is going to help me create that straight line, kind of help me define the rectangle. And literally all I'm going to do is painting the rectangle. So I want to make sure that I try at best to keep the lines in one single direction. So you're gonna see that I'm showing you, and actually in real time, I have not fast forward. This is how long it took me to color my little rectangle. I'm trying to keep the line as straight as I can. That's what I'm using. The flat brush is just, it's gonna help me with defining that line, and at the same time, because it's wider, it's gonna cover more space at the same time. I don't mind if in some areas I have to go on the opposite way with my brush. You're gonna see that I also have a round brush there that's just gonna help me soften up some of the lines. So all I'm doing right now is just painting the rectangle. Now my idea with the grid is I want to have a rectangle that is painted, but then when it comes to the outer corners, so think about the 4 corners of my layout, which are going to be the 4 corners of the grid. I want to have kind of an explosion of color there. And what I mean by that is you're going to see I've painted my rectangle. Whatever's left over on my palette or my little acetate, I'm going to use it to create splatters. In this case, I'm working with the yellow right on the bottom right corner of the little rectangle. So you're gonna see, like I said, it's kind of, think of it as exploding at the bottom. Nothing in the center. I want to try to keep it as clean as I can in the center, but I want to have that explosion at the bottom right corner. And I'm gonna do the same for every single one of the rectangles. It's just my way of bringing a little bit of art and messiness into like a really straight grid. So you're gonna see that I'm just right now softening the lines, and whatever's I have left over, I'm gonna add a little bit more of pigment. I'm gonna dilute it with some water, and then I'm literally gonna lift up my plastic. I'm using acetate. This is the cover of the foundation paper. I'm just gonna drop like the ink, or in this case the watercolor, only on the bottom right corner of my little rectangle, a little bit towards the center. I'm gonna try to as best to keep my center clean. I want to have that definition of the lines. So Once I have that, I'm gonna make sure that it dries for a little bit before I continue on to the next color. And I'm gonna speed up the process because I'm gonna show you pretty much all of it, but I need to speed it up, otherwise we're gonna be sitting here for 2 hours. So the next color that I'm gonna choose is actually navy, and this is from the neutral set. I'm just gonna scribble it. I love the combination of the color. I wanted something really saturated. I'm not gonna make it super dark because I wanna add more stuff to it. So again, I'm using my flat brush. I'm gonna make sure that the pigment is runny enough that I can paint with it, but not watery. So you're gonna see that I'm just painting my little rectangle. I am trying my best to kind of get rid of the bristle marks, but I'm trying at best, and I'm trying, and I have a little bit of a wiggle. So, but to paint the rectangle. And again, I'm gonna add, think of it as an explosion of color or splatters only on the bottom right corner of the application. So you're gonna see again extra pigment diluted. I'm lifting up my palette and just literally dropping the paint on the bottom right corner. Kind of think of it, the rectangle exploding at that corner. I'm gonna make sure that it dries. You're gonna see how it's already dried, and I'm gonna come in with another color. Now here I'm using a little bit of teal. This is from the Cool set, and I'm gonna add a little bit of blue to it just to darken it a bit, and a little bit of gray. I just want a bit of darkness to it, just so it's different from the blue. You're gonna see they look very similar, but by adding a little bit of the gray and the blue, it just kind of takes a more greenish tone to it. And again, I'm just gonna go ahead, paint my rectangle. You're gonna see that you see bristle marks. Doesn't bug me. A lot of this is not gonna be covered with stuff. It's gonna be covered some areas with some mixed media, others with pieces of paper. I just wanted to have the definition of the 4 rectangles on my background. So again, I'm gonna add the splatter so that it looks that my little rectangle is exploding on the bottom right corner of it. Once I have that, I'm gonna go ahead and create my last rectangle. I wanted something green. If you see the collection, there's a paper that has the corduroy look on the B side, and it's a really dark green. So to get to this green, I'm gonna mix this one that looks like leaf green with a little bit of that really bright green and a little bit of black. The black is gonna take care of bringing the tone down, deepening the color, which is what I'm going for. Once I'm happy with it, and you're gonna see that I never pulled the strip of my foundation paper. I use that 1/2 inch of paper that is left over to test the color, to make sure that I have the right color. And I'm just gonna follow the same procedure, paint my rectangle, and then add the splatters as if the box is breaking. I'm gonna make sure that it dries completely before I go into the next thing. And what I'm using right now, I'm using a gel pen. This is a gel pen 10. These, the ones that I have, are Pentel pens. And all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna literally do false stitching, marking or creating the lines that are gonna divide my grid. Now that I look at it, I think I should have stitched it just to give that texture and create that defined separation. I might go back and actually add the stitching, and what I mean by that is I probably hand stitch. I wouldn't use my sewing machine. One, because I've already added stuff to it, but second, because when I hand stitch, I can add quite a bit of definition, because I can use around 6 strands of embroidery floss, and I think it needs that just to create the definition of the grid. That's the only thing that I think I missed on this layout. So once I have that in place, I'm going to start actually defining each one of the quadrants of the grid. So for the part of where I have the green rectangle, my idea is I want to play with shapes. I want to play with circles and stars. So I'm bringing the specialty paper from the collection. It's full of circles. They have this gold foil. They have lines, which is pretty much what I have going on this layout. But my idea is I want to make sure that I use the circles to define that quadrant. So I'm gonna fussy cut the circles that are at the corner of the paper, just so when I attach it onto my layout, it gives me the definition of the quadrant. So think of it as a quarter of a circle that's gonna be right in the center of my layout. And the way I am attaching the vellum, because this is vellum, onto my paper is using glue dots. Glue dots are transparent. I'm actually gonna attach 2 of them together because I couldn't find the ones that are thick. I just had the thin ones. So by attaching 2 of them, I added a little bit of dimension. And that's just gonna help me with the dimension in the little quadrant. What I'm gonna make sure is that when I reach the edge, you know, where I have that explosion of color, I'm gonna add some of my circles coming off the grid just to help me with that splatter section, kind of an explosion. And then I had, like I said, I'm gonna play with shapes. I want to pull these stars are from an old Vicki stamp set, and I'm gonna set them aside. I want to create circles in a different way that are actually going to being a diagonal to the circles that I added from the vellum paper. So my idea is I'm actually gonna add mixed media, more mixed media. So I went into my little set of stencils, and this is from the Radiate set. This is from the new stencil set. It's the circles that are all together. So I'm gonna make sure that I put it on my paper, making sure that it fits on the center. I added some washi tape to protect the area and keep it on the center, and I'm using gold glaze in my stencil brush. I'm gonna make sure that I apply the gold glaze with the stencil brush through the stencil so that the darkest part of the application is right at the center, that it creates that line that divides the grid, the quadrant in this case. And then I'm just gonna kind of fade the application as I go towards the edge where I have that explosion of color. Once I have that in place, I'm actually gonna dilute the extra gold glaze that I have left over on my palette, a little bit of water, and then I'm gonna splatter some of that onto the application, and then just add a few splatters to each one of the quadrants. I wanna bring some of that gold foil that I have on the circles that I'm adding on this diagonal section to the circles using mixed media. That's where my title is gonna go. I already know that I want my title there. That's why I kept it very flat, so my title is gonna stand out there. And then my picture is gonna go on the yellow quadrant. It's not gonna sit straight. I'm actually gonna flip it a bit. So what I did while my gold glaze dried is I went and pulled some of the papers from the collection. I stayed with teals, blues, and a little bit of green to cut some of the stars. So I'm just placing them in the way that I want to. I know that I'm gonna add dimension to these stars. So before I glue them, I need to take care of the picture just to make sure that I balance this. And like I said, it is gonna be quite busy. Not that I love it. I don't love it completely, and I'll tell you why, because I think I need to add the stitching just to create that definition, but I like it a lot, and it's a little bit more, I think. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just framing my picture with a little bit of the yellow paper. This is the B side of that daisy paper, just because I want to bring the color that I have on the background. And then I'm gonna bring some of the ephemera pieces just to help me create a little cluster on the top left corner of my picture, just so it balances. You see how I'm adding all the extra how do you call it, the extras right at the corners where I added those explosions of splatters. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring some of the stars that I have ready to use on the bottom, you know, where the blue area is, and I'm also gonna bring some of the circles just so that I tie the circle and star theme that I have on this layer. Once I have that in place, I'm actually gonna start working on the stars. So you're gonna see that I'm gonna use my ruler to make sure that I cut it straight edges, and I can create the illusion of the quadrant on my paper. So what I do is I usually take my ruler, sit it flush on my star, and then just cut using the ruler as a guide, and that gives me a straight line, and I'm able to create that definition line for my quadrant. I'm adding a little bit of foam adhesive behind the stars just to give him some lift. I'm not gonna cover the entire quadrant with it because I know that the part where I have the splatter, that's where I'm gonna add my lines with journal. So then I'm just playing with adding the title. If you find on the sticker sheet, there's a saying that says go where the stars take you, and this picture here, that's my 2 boys, my dog and my son. He's 20 years old now, and my son lives in sleeps in a bunk bed. He's always in the top of the bunk bed. So our dog loves to go there, and the saddest part is that they both fall asleep, and who do you think has to stand there watching that neither one of them falls down? Me. So sometimes 1-2 hours watching them, they don't fall down. So I added that in my little lines of journal, and then that's pretty much it. You're gonna see that I'm just going to kind of add another star to my title, to bring more of the circle. Even though I have the circle in the background, I'm gonna bring the little circles that I use as a bullet for my journal is 1, 2, 3, but there's also a 4 and 5. So I'm gonna use those behind the title. I'm gonna add some hearts. I'm gonna add some of the puffy stickers. I'm gonna come in with the sticker tablet and add some of the words to the stars, just because, you know, just some sentiments there. And that's about it. Like I said, I love how this turned out. You can see right now I'm adding little of the puffy stars to the circles just to tie everything together. I love how this turned out. I like it. I don't love it, but like I said, I think the problem that I'm encountering is that I need something to define the grid, and I haven't done it. I'll probably do it and take a picture. Is that I need to hand stitch right on the center just to create that definition and to bring texture. But I love how this turned out. It was a fun day to put this together. It took me a while, but I hope you try it. I love the fact that it is a very masculine, that is a grid with a little bit of mess, but I love it, and I hope you try it. As always, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact me. Jump onto the blog. There's direct link so you can find it, so you can see more details, like, you know, close-ups. As always, thank you so much for joining me, and don't forget, if you have any questions, leave me a comment. I can give you help with anything. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to see you next week. Take care, guys.